Let's kick off here, and I want to welcome everybody to the jam session, whether you're with us live or you're watching this on the recording. It's great to have you here. You should be seeing the share screen here. We've got our guest expert, LaRae Quy. LaRae's book, Secrets of a Strong Mind: How to Build Inner Strength to Overcome Life's Obstacles, is absolutely one of my favorites on my professional development shelf. And you can find more about LaRae at her website, but one of the things that's interesting, she's a prolific writer at Smart Brief. And here were some titles. Hopefully everybody can see that on screen. Here were some titles of some recent articles. This will give you a little bit of a feel for LaRae's tone. Don't let the kind, mild-mannered person that you're going to hear on screen fool you. She will club you over the head with a 2x4, metaphorically, on growing your mental toughness. LaRae, was that fair?
Oh, well, thank you for that introduction. I promise I will not bring out the crowbar or
Okay.
whatever to beat over anybody's head.
I love these
We're all
articles.
in this together. We're learning, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Do we all grow smarter together? So I love this. How embracing a low point in life can help you grow stronger.
Yeah.
We want to stay cool under pressure. 4 ways you can be mentally tough. Simple reasons the pursuit of happiness can make us miserable. We're coming back to that one. And 3 tips to increase your ability to become more resilient. Those are just a few of the dozens of articles LaRae has up at Smart Brief on leadership. So, all right. So what's our focus today? We have this wonderful expert with us. We get a chance to talk about how to build a stronger mind and strengthen mental toughness to navigate life's obstacles. I don't know about you, but I need some of that. And I think, frankly, we're at a place in this world where maybe we can all use a bit of rejuvenation of our mental toughness and a strengthening of our mind. I think this is really timely, LaRae, for sure.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, uncertainty and a fear pop up throughout life.
Yeah,
It
sure.
starts in the playground and when and who gets the red ball. So, and it's just a fact of life. So the sooner we can come to terms with it and learn how to deal with it, the better off we're going to be.
I love the comment from Kim in there. Her titles always grab her. Again, since I share so much of the content. And Lori's titles are great. I'm telling you, the metaphorical 2x4 over the head that we all need. So, all right. So let's talk about the involvement from the group, because this is a jam session. It's pretty formal, informal. Please light up the chat as you're already doing with comments and really a lot of questions today for
Mm.
Lori. Rare
Yeah, I'd
opportunity
love
to
to
have.
hear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, bring the questions. I think today's topic, it's kind of a personal one. So, although it's really tempting to ask the crowd, hey, do you think you're mentally tough? And I'll have a version of that question. It's kind of a personal one, and very few of us would be loath to admit, I'm a mental weakling. So,
Well,
ask LaRae questions.
well, yeah, exactly. I always say you're either mentally tough or you're a wimp. I
The
mean,
word wimp comes up
and
a lot in
the
your
wimp
book.
comes up a lot, and that I was raised that way. I was raised in a cattle
Yeah.
ranch in Wyoming, and my dad, one of his biggest insults to somebody would to call him a wimp, and it just stuck with me. So you either have a strong mind and you're mentally tough, or you're a wimp. He sort of had it was either black or white with him.
As I was rereading the book, I found myself reflecting on whether, which category I might have fallen into in different circumstances. I might have earned the W award in a couple of cases. Hey,
I share you there. I share that.
speaking of the book, I want to give some books away today. So up to 3. Now, I have to tell you, I use a super secret algorithm. It's completely subjective, and I decide on a great comment and or a great question. I can only send books out to people in the U.S., so apologies for that for those of you internationally. But we're going to give a few of LaRae's books today. You'll find it one of the most valuable books you've ever encountered. So, yeah, totally subjective
Thank you
selection.
so much, Art. Very kind. I appreciate that.
I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to spread the good word. But the session recording and an anonymous chat will be sent out. So just everybody be aware. I know there's going to be a lot going on in the chat environment. We'll make sure that we anonymize it, if that's a term, before we send that out. And you know what? Most of all, help each other, right? We all grow smarter together in this process.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So for those of you that have been to many jam sessions before, you know I easily get lost in my own maps. I have now added a little icon to remind me to go back up to the top. So. We just
Oh,
have to keep emerging here. So we've got some interesting comments there on, Jackie. What are the shades of gray between wimp and tough? Oh, I love that question to
that's
kick
a
it
really good
off.
question. And Jackie, thank you for asking that because basically gray is where we live. Whether you're in a political party or a religious group, there's always these absolutes at either end, right? But most of us live in the middle. It's the gray area. And I would say this, that's where most of us are, and that is our journey. Like I said, I think we could all, I've identified as a wimp a couple of times in the playground with the red ball. Let me just say, I've been there, and my journey is in the gray. It's moving towards the other side, moving towards mental toughness. So I think we have to embrace that gray because that's where we find out more about ourselves and our situation. So if you don't embrace gray and you only have these absolutes on either side, you're not living in reality.
Yeah, Greg, I love that comment. Mental purgatory. Yeah, we can end up there for sure. And you know what? A
Absolutely.
couple of folks chiming in on the family encounters where it's really easy to kind of back off of the mental toughness and move into that slightly wimpier category for sure.
Well, I think we all have to be smart about it, and I would like to know how they define mental toughness,
Well,
because
and look at that question on screen, LaRae. When you hear the
yes,
phrases mental toughness and strong mind, what do you think of? So perfectly for the group, give us your thoughts in chat.
I would love to hear what your thoughts are because, well, I don't want to, but in a way, I would say this. Most people would define mental toughness as just plowing your way through obstacles or roadblocks or whatever, just, straight ahead. But that might work if you're plowing snow or, or you're in a football team. But in real life, that is not going to get you where you want to go. So I would say this mental toughness is managing your emotions, your thoughts, and your behavior in ways that set you up for success. So that
We're
means you do have to address the emotional part as well.
we're going to build on each of those. So let's see what we have here from some comments.
I see a bunch of,
Mary, yeah, able to remain calm during stressful situations, provide
yes,
guidance when the you know what hits the fan, leave family issues at home. When need to buck up, Greg. Yeah, yeah, Dad, stiff upper lip for those of my folks over in the UK. Unshakable, quick to rebound. I like that one, Frank.
that
Uh,
is good.
yeah,
That is good. I
Laura,
like that too.
resilience equals mental toughness. The positive aspect of moving through hard times without giving up on a goal. Oh, I love that. Connor, nicely said. Not easily rattled. Love the brevity there. Yep, I agree. Keep positive and critically thinking through the challenges, accepting risk and remaining flexible, be able to compartmentalize. Oh my gosh, there are so many great answers in here. So thank you all. Yeah. And when Walter, yours at the bottom of my chat list here, vulnerability, the one word. What do you think about that one, LaRae? A gentle feedback for Walter on the term vulnerability as it relates to
Well,
mental
I
toughness.
don't, I like that. I like
Mhm.
that a lot because when make ourselves vulnerable, it depends on who we make ourselves vulnerable to. So I'm going to clarify that. I say be vulnerable to yourself. And
Ooh.
that means understanding who you are. The first step in mental toughness is self-awareness. And people don't really understand that, but it gets right to Walter's point. It means that we need to look at ourselves. We need to be honest about what is inside. Because again, we're going back to the gray area of being a wimp or being mentally tough. And it's a progression. We're moving towards mental toughness. But the way to get there is to look at yourself and that requires self-awareness.
Love that. I love that. All right. So come back. Just a few minutes ago, you gave us a brilliant description of, could you repeat that, please? What is mental toughness in your definition?
In my definition, but I mean, I'm looking at their comments here, and Jackie said it's being able to think in stressful situations, and
Hmm.
Mary said able to compartmentalize emotion from logic, reason, all of those. So mental toughness is managing your emotions, your thoughts, and your behavior in ways that will set you up for success. And your folks here, I'm looking at all of the trying to keep positive. Regina, thank you for that. That's a there's some core elements of mental toughness. You start with self-awareness, then you move into to the resilience and how you build resilience.
Build resilience. Okay. I love that. So we're going to actually dive into each of these a little bit. So do you
Okay.
separate from mental tough? We also use the term strong mind. Is there a separate kind of definition
No,
on that one?
no, not really. They're pretty much the same thing. It's somebody
Mhm.
who's able to manage their, again, you manage your behavior. I tell you this, if you change your mindset, you change the behavior, you change the outcome.
Change mindset, change
Change
the behavior.
mindset, it will then change your behavior, change the outcome.
And doesn't that fit your three principles, which are attitude,
Yes,
action,
tenacity. And
uh, and, and I'm sorry, which
yes,
well,
yes, no, yeah, yeah, it's exactly, yes.
gosh, I'm blanking on the third one. There's attitude,
Oh,
action, and
yeah, attitude, action, and tenacity.
tenacity. Yes.
Yeah,
I
I'm
wasn't
sorry, I wasn't
tenacious enough to
following you.
remember that. Yeah,
I
yeah. No, those are
apologize.
your three principles that come up over and over again. All right, so you have, and we're going to talk about the mental toughness assessment that you kindly offered to the world for free. I actually took it
Yes.
yesterday. It was interesting. It was insightful. I've taken it before. So, what from all of the research, all of the work you've done with folks, what are some of the characteristics or behaviors of mentally tough people? And I see Jen just put the link for the assessment up there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and it's absolutely free. So I
Mhm.
mean, and I didn't do it to make money. I did it because I wanted to get, the reason I'm doing this to begin with is really just to help people um, become the person they were truly created to be and
Mhm.
not default into whatever's easy or whatever somebody else thinks you should be, which happens to a lot, happens to us a lot, especially in school. Your parents, your teachers, or whatever, they push you in a direction. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not, but a lot of times it's default. So the characteristics of mentally tough people are those who truthfully understand the difference between positive thinking and optimism. And there's a difference.
Okay, hold that because we're going to come to that one in a little
All
bit.
right.
All
All
right.
right.
What are some other characteristics you see
The
most
other
often?
characteristics are you understand your values.
Uh-huh.
You live your life. First of all, you know what is important to you. You know your values and you live by them and not
Hmm.
what somebody else's values are. And so that would be the second one.
Okay.
And the third one would be having a really supportive network around you. Now, family used to qualify for this, right? But
Uh-huh.
family anymore is a movable feast. So it's people who maybe you work with them, maybe they're your neighbors, whatever, but it's a support network that's not just, oh, you were right, they were wrong. It's somebody who's going to help you be a better person.
Hmm.
And then the fourth one really is spirituality or hope. They sort of are intertwined there. And I take a lot of that from in the early 2000s, General George Casey had, there were multiple deployments to Iraq, and his soldiers were coming back depressed and unable to really move out from the trauma that they had experienced in the battlefield. And so he pulled together a bunch of psychologists and psychiatrists to help him develop it's a comprehensive soldier fitness program. But those experts set up a lot of these elements that I'm talking about. The
Hmm.
importance of hope and some sort of spiritual aspect. It doesn't necessarily mean church, but it means a spiritual aspect. And the other tenets I talked about.
Gotcha. Those are great. I'm checking some of the comments here from the group. Anthony, mental toughness grows when you intentionally face hard things, tough workouts, cold showers,
Right.
and difficult conversations.
You
Yeah,
were right.
yeah.
Joseph is
I love
right.
that.
I do too. I like that.
Yeah,
Um, and
uh, yeah. Play the
I'm
game
trying
to
to
the
read
best
his
of your
comment.
ability.
Yes, that's true. Joseph makes a really good point because sometimes it's just easier to take the easy side, right? You turn away. You don't want to have that hard conversation. At the cold shower would do me in. But there's one thing I learned in the FBI Academy. I mean, if they weren't pushing us into our discomfort zones, they weren't doing their job. And I
Hmm.
think that's basically what Joseph is talking about, is a discomfort zone. But it's interesting. Discomfort zones are so important to us. Um, it's where we grow, and there's been research behind it. It's not just me spouting off. And I always, I always talk about, the research behind it because it's important. The research is important. It's not just me spouting off. So in the FBI, we used to say theories are nice, evidence is better.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a common theme throughout the book there. So I
Yeah.
love the fact Joseph did share, in fact, that football is played with a round ball. Okay. Uh,
Yes.
Justin, I've learned it takes emotional intelligence, but also humility when we humble ourselves, when we're no longer insecure in outcomes we don't have control over. Genuine humility abolishes insecurity. Oof, that is so quotable.
It is. That's such a great point. And again, looking at yourself and looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly, and not pretending that you're perfect because nobody's perfect. That takes humility because you're going to see yourself. It's like, oh, I do this. I do this. I don't know why I do it, but I do it. And
Mhm.
that takes humility to be able to face that.
So, and Greg adds that like first responder, it includes running to the problem as opposed to away from.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like
Yeah, that
that.
you nailed
Oh,
that
that's
one,
a good
Greg.
one.
I'm thinking, Greg, there's all great comments. Greg, you're in for a book if you're here in the US, which I know you are. So drop me a shipping address at my email and we'll get you a copy of LaRae's book. See, I told you I was going to do this. So I don't really want you to answer it unless you're comfortable a bit with it, but ask yourself, are you mentally tough? Are you able to live to what everybody is talking to here? And again, Jen already shared a link to LaRae's free mental toughness assessment. It requires a first name and an email address. The results are instantaneous. I think there are 30 questions there, and it was fascinating. I really enjoyed it, and I'm still reflecting on a couple of the answers and the results. Even on your assessment, you're kicking my butt, LaRae.
You know what? No, I really want to point out one thing about that assessment. I went to the clinic, I had it verified, and I just went to the clinical psychology department at Arizona State University. And because I said, this is what I want to do. And so they helped me format that questionnaire, that mental toughness assessment. So it's not just stuff pulled out of the air. It's been, sort of good housekeeping seal of approval by a bona fide clinical psychology department. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Great. Jackie X, a comment there. Her toughness is situational. I think we might all fall into that. And Regina, because I've worked with you, I can vouch for what I perceive as your mental toughness and some of the trials and challenges you've successfully navigated there as well. So good, good. Take the assessment, get a chance to reflect on that. So, oh, there might be another book coming here. So for the group in very few words, because you're operating in chat, right? What was a situation where you needed to be mentally tough? So brevity is good here, but what was a situation where you had to be mentally tough? And LaRae, while they're teeing some of those up, we'll loop back. How about picking one of your favorites from many, whether it's from the cattle ranch or the FBI? There were so many good examples in the book. Again, rereading it over the last few days. So pick one to help kind of tee off where you actually had to develop mental toughness on the fly.
On the fly. Okay. I think probably the scariest situation I was ever in was my first arrest.
Ooh.
And I was brand new out of the FBI Academy. I'd been in my office in Phoenix actually for, maybe a couple of weeks. And so I had a training agent and he had this case. It was a guy from the East Coast somewhere who was wanted for, I believe, child kidnapping and extortion. And he was
Hmm.
believed to be armed and dangerous. So I was just supposed to be the person who learned, the FBI SWAT team was going to be the one making the actual arrest. And I was just there to observe. So we take out and we find him, he's in his house. We follow him. We're going to arrest him at the first red light he comes to. It was an early morning. So as it happened, all green lights. And as it happens
Figures.
in the
Right. That
morning,
never happens.
a lot of traffic. I mean,
Yeah.
who would have thought? There's commute traffic. And so one by one, the FBI SWAT team cars are cut off. My training agent just kept on his bumper. I mean, he said, "I'm not letting this guy go." And so we came to our first red light. I looked around and there weren't any SWAT team cars at all. And I'm in the shotgun seat, right? The passenger seat. Ron pulled right up next to him and just looked at me and said, "You're going to have to be the one to make this arrest."
Ooh.
So, this was a change in the plans. And I will say this, the only ones who like change are babies. And that's because they know what's coming, right? So I'm going, oh my God, everything I'd learned in the academy, I'm going to have to actually do it. And with a guy who was armed and dangerous. So I got out, I took off my raid jacket, FBI raid jacket, and pulled my sweater over my gun. And I got out and I sort of tapped on his window, right? And he kind of looked at me surprised and I waved and he kind of waved back. And then I said, "Roll down your window like this." And he did. And then I just pulled out my gun and said, "FBI, you're under arrest." So it was an incredibly scary situation for me. But I will point out, there's a lot of lessons in this one single story, but I admitted to myself I was scared. And I also admitted to myself that I had to find the inner strength and overcome the fear if I was to do my job. This was basically my job, right? And so, that off the fly, I came up with about 5 positive things. First of all, I'd taken off my raid jacket. He didn't know I was FBI. I don't look like a lot of typical FBI agents that are going to drag. This guy was about 300 pounds. His stomach was so big, he was just pushed up against the steering wheel. But I don't look like a typical FBI agent, right? That's going to just pull this big guy out of the car. I knew, I'd practiced this many, many times in the academy. We had done this before. All I had to do was, that muscle memory of what I needed to do. And so when it actually came to it, I got my thinking brain and my emotions under control. My thinking brain, eh, you know, uh, knew that I was scared, so it was able to empathize and move on, which is really important when you're dealing with emotions. But that just as I was getting ready to try to pull him out of the car, order him out of the car, I heard FBI, the SWAT team they just abandoned their cars and were running up the street. So I didn't actually have to pull him out, but I was prepared to do it. And there was a loaded gun under the front seat. So that was on the fly. That positive thinking I was talking about earlier is really important. It's super, super important when you're in a situation like that.
Yeah, well, that underscores the difference between optimism. I mean, you didn't sit there and say, well, I'm sure everything will work out, the optimistic mind. You had positive thinking. Hey, I'm able to do this. I've done these 5 things. I'm in control of myself.
Yes. And so, research, again, it's not just me spouting off. Research at Stanford University has proven you need anywhere between 3 to 5 positive thoughts to counter each one negative thought. That's how strong that negativity bias is in our brain. It's a safety mechanism. The brain's main job is to keep us safe. So it will look at anything negative and just give it a lot more attention. So we have to really fight. In the FBI, we call it hunt the good stuff because you have to do that.
Mhm. I think that's such a powerful takeaway for everybody here. So for the next time you're giving that big presentation to the board of directors or to senior management, or you're having to deal with a tough conversation, there's 3 to 5 positive thoughts to counter one negative thought. And again, LaRae goes into even more depth in the book. Let's take a moment here. There was some really amazing and frankly humbling examples in here of individuals who were picking moments when they had to be mentally tough.
Yeah.
From an employee passing away, supporting a spouse through a deep depression, losing loved ones. My heart goes out to each of you that highlighted that. Thank you for being comfortable sharing that. Being sent to war away from a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old son, dealing with layoffs, being the one to do that. Yeah, Walter, controlling your negative thoughts, which is really what LaRae was all about in that example, in that 3 to 1 or 5 to 1 exam scenario there. Yeah, Regina, your situation. I love that you threw in there that you actually do love change, love challenges. So you're comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's the sign of one of the signs of a mentally tough person, isn't it, LaRae?
It absolutely is. And I will say this, we get complacent. And
Hmm.
when we get comfortable, that's what happens. We become complacent. And I will say this that, and I follow the research on this again, and I think it's in my book. And if it is in my book, then there is the source of the. But comfort zones actually erode our confidence because we just kind of, we know what to expect. We don't put ourselves out there. We don't learn anything new. We sort of just go with the flow because it's worked for us, right? And who wants to mess with that? But this comes out of, I believe it was Yale University, and they just said, we only learn when there is uncertainty because stability is and complacency it's a shut-off valve for the brain. So as much as we don't like it and as uncomfortable as it can be, we need to be uncomfortable. And I always say the only difference between a rut and a coffin are the dimensions, because that's how our brain is wired. And I think it's really important when you talk about mental toughness or strong mind, you're talking about understanding how the brain operates and
Hmm.
how you've got your little limbic emotional system there too, and those two can fight an awful lot because you know the brain thinking brain just wants logic and it wants numbers and that kind of thing, but it may be small, but that little emotional limbic brain is more powerful than our thinking brain. And if you think about it, we're often overcome with emotion. We just can't control it. It's really important, I think, for people to understand our first response will always be negative, will always be emotional. We will always have an emotional response first because that's how we're wired. It's how fast we can then get in control of that emotion. If it's a good emotion, great. If it's a negative emotion, now's the time you need mental toughness. And that doesn't mean cramming that negative emotion down. That's not the answer. And the strong mind is not the one who can just pound down that emotional reaction. It's the one who can understand it and and not manipulate it necessarily, but ally its fears, persuade it, let it know that you understand. The thinking brain understands that it's scared, and then just like acknowledge that. And I was scared of that arrest on the street. I was scared to death, and I just acknowledged it. I said that I said I will not use the word I use, but I'm in my mind. But I was in deep crap there. So that was just the way it is. And so you can either embrace it. Somebody said in your discussion, you can either embrace the difficulty, the discomfort zone, or you can just run away. And it's up to you.
That process of taking the negative emotion and kind of labeling it and examining it versus just trying to push it out of the way. How do we learn how to do that, LaRae? I mean, it sounds difficult.
It is. It is hard. And I'm not going to pretend that, I have all the answers to that because I don't. I go
Mhm.
through it all the time. If I write an article and it gets like 25, views or something, I'm going, oh my God, what was wrong with it? That title, maybe the title was the problem. Whatever. And that's just natural. I mean, a negative, that's a very lightweight negative
Right.
emotion to experience. I don't mean to denigrate the more serious. You lose a spouse, you lose your job, you lose,
Right.
whatever. But whatever the negative emotion is, it's important to first, a couple of things. First of all, you need to nip it in the bud.
Hmm.
So acknowledge it and then nip it in the bud. So the faster you just come to terms with the fact that this is not good, this hurts, this whatever, the better for you. Because negative emotions are their weakest when they first appear,
Hmm.
absolute weakest. And that got me through without even knowing it. It was sort of a gut response, I guess. From growing up on that cattle ranch in Wyoming, I faced a lot of fears up there. But that was I nipped it in the bud right away. I said, "Holy crap. How am I going to do this?" But I mean, so I said, okay, moving on. I acknowledged it, but I moved on. And it's important to label the emotion for what it really is. I mean, it can be embarrassing. And somebody mentioned it can be very humbling to be mentally tough and to really look at yourself, but to really label it for what it is and not just what sounds good, because we try to put band-aids on things, right? So label them, even if it's embarrassing one, like, I'm jealous or whatever. Just label it. But label it in one or two words. It's really important you don't and start a dialogue with yourself about this negative emotion. Not at that time, maybe later, but at the time it's happening, just don't just one or two words. Just jealous, I'm jealous, or I'm scared, or I don't have the courage, whatever it is. And then just notice it, which is what I ended up doing on that arrest scenario. Notice it and then move on to how you can overcome that situation, which again in this scenario I did that's what I did. So those are some tips to help you when you
Those
do
are
notice.
great, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, but you're talking about what Goleman describes as the concept of amygdala hijack and
Yes, that's
overcoming
right.
that concept of amygdala hijack. Yeah, which is really a great
Absolutely.
term. It took me years to learn how to spell amygdala.
And pronounce it
Amygdala.
correctly. But
Yeah,
no,
so
no, but that is so true, though. And again, he gets right to the heart of it when you
yeah.
talk about, because I don't know, like, we think mentally tough. I don't have to. The emotions are not going to affect me, but you will be sabotaged by those emotions if you don't pay attention to them, and that's not what you want, especially if it's a negative emotion.
Well, and don't many of us have kind of default mechanisms? So, for example, earlier in my life in the corporate world, when faced with resistance, I didn't have the flight, I had the fight mechanism, the argue mechanism, whether it was a senior executive or not. It was viewed as cute for a little while until it wasn't.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah,
we have
yeah.
default mechanisms, and many of my clients, when faced with some unexpected stressor, they tend to withdraw. They just kind of go into themselves and so your guidance here on how to overcome that is helpful.
You know what I found, and I don't know if this is fits into the questions that you've got lined up, but through the mental toughness assessment, and I had a lot of CEOs, a lot of people from very, all levels of their career.
Hmm.
Lack of confidence, surprisingly, it was the number one thing that came up, that they battled with or that came out from that assessment that was holding them back. Lack of confidence, and I find that very interesting
So,
because
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, because confidence isn't something we're born with. Neither is mental toughness. It's something we develop through life.
It's so true. And we develop typically through hardships, right? And navigating failures and all of those issues.
It does. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing is, and I have nothing against the self-help industry really, but you can't get confidence from a book. I mean, you might get some tips, and
Right.
and that's what all I can do with my book. I try to do the research for you because I'm not going to just be spouting off, oh, this is what LaRae says. No, no, no. This is what Yale University research says. This is what Stanford University research says. But just become aware of our strengths and weaknesses so we
Mhm.
can manage our weaknesses and develop our strengths. And I know that a lot of times people instead will find, what are your weaknesses so we can work on them? Okay, manage those weaknesses. We all have them. We all have weaknesses.
Sure,
And
sure.
then develop your strengths.
I think isn't one of the challenges that we actually not only do we not often see our gaps or our weaknesses, we're pretty miserable at seeing our strengths as well.
Well, we are, yeah, we just see again, started the whole thing with you start with self-awareness.
Self-awareness, yeah, I agree.
And that is just critical because and with that comes authenticity. And we haven't talked about that, but and again, you don't always associate being mentally tough with being authentic, but it is because you're operating from who you are, your strength. I tell you, the importance of everyone, they need to excavate the significance of their own experiences and their own situations because it's there in you. You've
Mhm.
survived to this point, and it probably wasn't all just perfect. You've had those obstacles. How did you excavate the significance of those experiences? Because that the way you deal with failure will help you develop a way to success. So own those failures, learn from them. They have so much to teach us.
So much good wisdom. So Connor offers just a really well-stated question here. Would you agree that the goal is to feel the emotion, understand it, and guide the energy it provides into action?
Oh, wow. That is so good. I love that. That is excellent. I really like that. And you've hit it right on the nail on the head.
That's fantastic. Connor,
Yeah.
make sure I get your shipping address and we'll get you a book. And there were so many other good examples in there. I'm going to be mentally weak. There were so many that were humbling with life issues. I'll reach out to a couple of folks in that chat stream post event and award one because I'm not going to pick one over the other, given some of those things there. So
Yeah.
yeah, really, really powerful. All right, so Jackie, can toughness be innate? Or is it trained? And I think I had somewhere in life, yeah, are we born or developed? Somewhere here, born with or developed? What do you think?
I don't believe we are born with mental toughness.
Hmm.
It's something that we develop and can continue to develop throughout our life. I mean, that's where the excitement of life is, really. At least for me, I look at it as a way to keep learning, keep growing. I want to be mentally stronger tomorrow than I am today, and that doesn't mean I'm beating myself up over it. But taking a critical look, a loving critical look at myself to see where is greed in all of that? What are some of the nastier, less, more embarrassing type of emotion we might be feeling? And, where did that pop up from? And I see a strong mind is a journey that begins with self. So true. So shit happens. I agree. Life is hard. Pain is inevitable. Growth, however, is optional.
Ooh, pain is inevitable.
Pain is inevitable. Life is hard. That's the
Yeah,
first one. Life is hard. Pain
got
is
it.
inevitable. Growth is optional. Yeah. I mean,
I
that's
feel like I want to tattoo that on my forearm, or at least write it in a Sharpie. Sorry, opening. Life is hard.
life is hard.
Yeah. Pain is
Pain is
inevitable.
inevitable.
Growth is optional. It would
Growth
help.
is
Yeah.
optional.
All right. So, and I'm quoting LaRae here. So I know it's a family show. So that second line, stuff happens, right?
Okay, stuff happens. Sorry about that. Sorry.
We're a family show, LaRae. All right. And this one, I love this quote. At some point, we have a choice, right? We can either melt into a puddle of pity or we can take action and develop a strong mind that harnesses the willpower to move forward. So did I tell you that LaRae regularly beats me over the head with a metaphorical two by four? This would be one of those scenarios. I don't want to melt into a puddle of pity.
Of
So
pity.
for the
Yeah.
group, what gets in the way of us being mentally tough? What gets in then, LaRae? I'll come to you on that one. But
Yeah.
Laura is highlighting your yes, yes to growth is optional. Locus of control. Yeah, that is a concept that comes through. Some people think the world is stacked up against them, and others realize the world happens and they have to do their best to adapt.
Yeah, yeah. To be real truthful, I think the biggest problem, the biggest thing that keeps us from being mentally tough is ego.
Ooh, okay.
I really do. I mean, I understand, and I love, it was it Jackie who said fatigue, and I
Yes,
agree
she
with you
did. Yeah.
there. I mean, it's a good point because we all get to the point it's like it's just easier to give up. I mean, I've been there. It's just, it's just go along to get along. I think we've all been there. So I will fatigue it presents its own kind of challenge, but ego is really, I think, what is gets in the way because ego wants to be in control. And an ego will really kind of keep you from looking at yourself honestly because it always wants to present itself as I can do this, or I am not necessarily perfect, but I know how to handle this. I've got it. And sometimes we do. I mean, that's confidence. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
But the problem becomes when ego doesn't want to acknowledge those areas that really maybe do need to be worked on that you know so I have been a victim. I'll give you an example. It's a painful example for me, but I have to acknowledge it. um, I, I do a lot of personality tests, and I had to. I worked with the behavioral science unit at Quantico because my job is to recruit foreign spies to work for the United States government. So I needed to understand how they thought, right? And so there's a lot of different personality types, and I was using the Enneagram. But anyway, my personality type is, look at me, I did this. I mean, it's a 3 on the Enneagram. If you're familiar with it, it's the overachiever. And I will admit that ego got in the way with my relationship with some of my colleagues because I was so determined to get ahead and do get the job done that I walked over some of my colleagues. And that was unfortunate for me. And it was ego because LaRae wanted to be out in front. And I had to acknowledge that. It was very humbling. I know somebody mentioned that in the comments that it is humbling. And I just had to say to the ego, you know what? I messed up. This was not supposed. I mean, that's on me. And
Mhm.
so I would say ego, but I'm
Okay.
curious what others would say. And
Well,
yeah.
we've got so many amazing, from the daily grind to too many fires to having to do the hard work to, insecure ego. Paul asks an interesting question. So an insecure ego question mark, don't you need a strong ego, strong beliefs and values to be mentally tough?
Oh, and that is ego under control.
Ah, okay.
That's the difference. I mean, yes, you do need to have, we all need egos to go out there and do our job and to do our job well and to be recognized for our job. I mean, that's kind of who we are as entrepreneurs and business people and CEOs or whoever's in your audience. So that's essential. You've got to have a strong ego, but you've got to have an ego that's under control so that if you mess up, you're not going to plow your way through it and say, nah, it was their fault. It was their fault. I did fine. And that happens a lot. I mean, we're seeing that in politics a lot. It's your fault, not mine. And that's an ego out of control. So that would be the difference.
I think I've resembled that remark at different points in my life here. So,
I have to. I have to. We all have. And see, that's just being gentle with ourselves, taking,
sure.
a loving, honest look at
Mhm.
ourselves.
So many good comments in the chat stream. Thank you for all of those. They're fantastic. So talk again on the kind of the three tenets, the three principles you highlight throughout the book that we have to move from controlling our attitude to into action, and then the stick to, you say stick to itness. I've refined my own word. It's stick to it-iveness. So
I
if we
like
use it
that.
3 times, it'll be a word. All right. So attitude, action, and tenacity. Mhm.
Right. Well, attitude is a little bit what we were talking about earlier. You change the mindset,
Right.
starts there. You change the behavior, you change the outcome. So attitude, it all starts with our attitude, right? And then action. I mean, I always say this, no one ever drowned in a pool of sweat. I mean, there was one thing I learned in the academy, again, besides being pushed into my discomfort zone every single day for 5 months. Ask me how I really feel about the FBI Academy, right? But I mean, but it meant I learned that you have to face whatever it is. And somebody in the comments said it beautifully, more better than I am saying it now. But we need to face that whatever's in front of us and not run away. And in that means a strategy. You figure out how you can use your strengths to move past or around or under or over whatever is in front of you to find that soft underbelly so you can make progress. And then the tenacity is just the stick with itness. It's working. It's making sure that you don't give up. But I will say this, when it comes to tenacity, I have found in myself and in others that if you really don't place value on where that that goal is taking you, so you got the action, you created the attitude, you know what you want, you did the action, the tenacity will break down though if
Mm.
you are not really wedded to your values. I'll give you a quick example. My first job was right out of college, and I, I grew up on a remote cattle ranch. I mean, I thought, oh, clothes. I was tired of jeans and boots. That's all I ever wore all the way through college, even. And so this was a fancy department store, and I'm going, oh, this is going to be so much fun. And so I went into it, and then became an assistant buyer, and all of it was, but I hated the job. I just hated it. I realized, I mean, I'm not denigrating those out there in retail, but it's not for me. And so I went back to school, and that's where the FBI found me. And I wasn't sure it was quite right for me, but after I got into the bureau, I realized fidelity, bravery, and integrity. That's
Mhm.
what the FBI stands for internally. And these are values I can get behind. Those are values I can get behind because that's why I was raised. So I'm just going to say, I am the kind of person that I am the 1% that makes the top 99% possible. Because when I came to the physical fitness part of it, I failed miserably. And I ran a real risk of being kicked out of the academy, not even making it to the FBI. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. It spoke to me. It spoke to something inside of me, deep inside of me, at the core of who I am. And so I did what I had to do. So that's where the tenacity came in. Because if you don't really love what that goal is beyond, the action that you're doing, you might just give up and try something easier. And that's fine. But the tenacity won't be there unless you're really wedded to whatever it is, and your values will pull you through. I mean, if that's
I
what you
love
want.
that. And you just highlighted, although it's a digression for another program, but what's wrong with 99% of all corporate goals and individual goals and organizations? We're not wedded to these things. We
Yeah.
need to find something that's meaningful to us, right? That's
We
impactful. And
absolutely
and we need to
do.
pursue that. So yeah,
Well,
so
yeah, Art, you're mentioning something, you're moving into an interesting as a part of the discussion because we talk about passion, right? We
Mhm.
talk about,
Right.
oh, what are you passionate about? And all of these graduation ceremonies are like, oh, follow your passion. And that's just BS because you ask more of yourself. Ask what gives you purpose. Passion versus purpose. I mean, passion are hobbies. Passion is eating an ice cream, having my little dog on my lap. Passion asks what the world can give you. Instead, ask yourself the bigger question: what can you give to the world? That is your purpose.
So that, first of all, that's powerful and profound, and I love the passion equals BS punch. How about this one? The pursuit of happiness. Tell us what you really think about that.
What do I really think? I think I wrote an article, Why All This Happiness BS is a lie.
I'm going to
Um,
quote you somewhere in this map.
oh, I tell you, I'm trying
There
to
it
keep
is,
it
right
in the
here.
family. How can you, yeah, you gotta, yeah, exactly. It's the wrong place to
I
start.
believe your direct phrase is it's a fleeting, vacuous emotion that feels good at the moment, but doesn't have the heft to take us through life. Two by four.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, I'm not a sourpuss. I don't mean to say that, but there's so much emphasis right now on happiness
Yeah.
and, the good life and being happy all the time. And books on happiness are just like flying off the shelves. Uh, but again, it's not something that's going to sustain you when you are hit with adversity. You lose a parent, you lose your job, you get a divorce, all these really hard things. And this happiness BS is just it's just that. You're going to put that book back on the shelf. Instead, pursue joy. Pursue fulfillment. Joy is something that is lasting. And it's not always at the surface. And that's okay. Sometimes it is, and that's great. But what joy is, it's deeper than
Deeper, yeah.
happiness. It's much deeper than happiness. And that's what we need to be pursuing. I'm fine. I'm happy when I go to a good movie. That's great. Or, and we have again small bouts of happiness. But if you plan or expect happiness to sustain you, you're in for a big awakening because it
Yeah,
won't.
Walter says it so wonderfully. Their happiness is like waiting to 65 to retire. And I might add on there, and expecting you're going to be, then you can finally be happy.
I know you know what, Walter, you hit it on the head there because so many people, I see that. I'm kind of getting to that age where people around me are starting to retire. And it's like, oh yeah, when I retire, I'll be able to I'll be happy. I'll be able to do all these things. No, you're going to carry your same miserable self with you into retirement. If you've been miserable the first 65 years, I mean, nothing's going to change unless you change your attitude. Again, change
Yeah,
the
mentally
mindset, change
tough.
the behavior, change the outcome.
And Kathleen, you paid it off wonderfully, albeit with a tough scenario. My pursuit of joy and fulfillment equals my action to start a divorce. A
Oh,
tough job, but worth the action.
it takes guts, doesn't it? It takes courage because Kathleen's marching right into the unknown, but that's where the growth is. I mean, if we stay in these little parameters here, we'll always be we'll be in a cage, really. We'll be limited by our beliefs of what we can do and what we can't do. So kudos to you, Kathleen, for having the courage to really step out and get yourself in a better situation.
Just well said. So, LaRae, I had left the backstory till later. I'm sensitive to time here. So,
Yes.
the good news is there's just wonderful detail about the backstory growing up on a cattle ranch. Now, what's interesting? My first reaction until I got to know you better through your autobiographical stories there was I'm thinking, okay, she's born on a cattle ranch. It's like hitting a home run, but being born on third base of mental toughness. I don't know if that mixed metaphor made any sense. But as it turns out, you had to do everything the hard way, from figuring out how to join your dad on a cattle ranch and getting on that darned horse, to so many other examples, to getting thrown and stuck on the barbed wire fence, or learning to reframe your view of cow piles. I mean,
Yes. So it is all about attitude. Exactly right, because a dried cow pile can be an excellent frisbee. So, I mean, it's an attitude. Is that how
that
you
you
want?
heard it here, folks. You heard it here. So, you
Well, you
know.
know what? If you're in Wyoming cattle ranch, it doesn't take much to entertain you.
Yeah,
So,
there you go. Yeah, and again, I loved in the book that LaRae really does share with you the reality of her life, which was disadvantages and self-limiting beliefs and a lack of confidence. So, with the
yeah.
time we have, so many good stories in the book, by the way, I wanted to focus and bear with me. I'm going to make everybody dizzy here. Self-limiting beliefs. I think this is one of the number one things that holds so many of us back from doing things. I hear it all of the time with clients
Yeah.
when I'm inspired by their brilliance and I've asked, have you thought about speaking about this or writing an article about it or writing a book? And they will say, who wants to hear from me? Or I can't do that. How do we deal with the self-limiting beliefs? How do we vanquish those things, LaRae?
I had so many self-limiting beliefs growing up. Uh, my dad was a wonderful cowboy. I wasn't. I mean, I had to really work. I became one, but there were so many things in my my younger life that were hard. And we've all gone through childhood, right? I mean, we all have. But again, I'm going to go back. Self-limiting beliefs is really basically a lack of confidence, to be really truthful.
Mhm.
And that's something again that we can develop. It's not something we're born with. I mean, the idea, this is what happened to me, and this is how I explain it in the book. An emotion comes up. It's negative. It's about self-limiting beliefs. I can't do this. I've never been able to do this. Whatever. A quick story. I don't think I have time for a story, but I got put in so many situations in the FBI training that I just had to move forward, because if I didn't, I'd lose my job, right? But again, I loved that idea of what I would be and the person I would become if I did become an FBI agent. And I think a good approach to, the negative things that come up when you think you can't do something is to road test
Mhm.
one negative response at a time. Pinpoint why you feel that way. I was never able to swim. I never grew up swimming. We had a raging, flooding river. I was scared to death of swimming. Guess what one of the requirements was in the FBI Academy? Jump into a pool, like a 15 or 20-foot pool with an M16 on our shoulder, and then swim to the other side. And I couldn't even swim. I was scared to death of water. I've seen cattle drown in that flooding river. So I mean, just saying that was a self-limiting belief that I couldn't swim. And but I had to do it. So guess what? I did the jump and I came up sputtering, and it wasn't pretty. And basically I crawled on the bottom to get to the other side, because that was part of the requirement, right? But it's just being smart about how you address whatever challenge is in front of you. You have to be smart about it, not
Mhm.
and think it through. But you have what it takes to do it. You just have to figure out your way of doing it.
If I recall, you used the five things as you stood there on the diving board, right?
I
You
sure
realized, yeah, you did. Do you remember what those were?
Oh, I will never forget what those things were, because I thought, sure, if I jumped into that pool, I would drown. So I'm up there, and first of all, my instructors were really good. I mean, I knew they could save me. Seriously, they would be able to save me. Second thing is, I'd never heard of anybody, of a new agent drowning in that exercise. I mean, that's something that would have got around halls, right?
Sure.
Third thing is, I knew the FBI wouldn't want a lawsuit that my parents would launch against them if I did drown, right? I mean, at this point, I'm just grabbing at
You're
things.
grasping, yeah, right.
Think positively. I've got to think about how I can get through this. I think it was the fourth or fifth thing was that I had a life jacket on.
Hmm.
It wasn't, but it was enough to keep me from actually drowning. So it was just a matter of holding on and to the M16, which is part of the exercise. And then the last thing was, again, which I've talked about before, is I really believe the FBI was my path forward. It was what I truly wanted. It gave me purpose. And that is what it took for me to take that jump. And I did survive, obviously. Like I said, it wasn't pretty, but I did make it to the other side.
What a great story to kind of tie things off here. So, I have to tell you, for everyone who does pick up the book or gets the book from me in this process, the story on LaRae going undercover with a very dangerous biker gang. Oh my gosh, you will sit on the edge of your seat.
That was scary. That was a really scary experience. And it taught me the importance of being authentic. And I will just say this, because I know we're running out of time. The only time I ran into trouble was and working undercover, was when I was trying to be somebody else. So no matter what name I slapped on, I was LaRae.
It was so cool to spend time just learning from you, engaging with you. I love the juxtaposition of the what you portray and the experiences you've had. You ooze this mental toughness concept so well. Here's the website there. I presume if people want to reach out to you, ask you questions or anything, they can
Oh,
contact you through the
please do.
website.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Then go to my website or just email me, LaRae@LaRaeQuy.com. I'd love to hear from you. I mean, if you have additional questions or whatever. I mean,
And I'll
it's
include that
LaRae
in the
at
follow-on.
LaRaeQuy. Yeah, LaRaeQuy.com. And thank you for pronouncing my name correctly, Art, because my name is a tough one.
It is. I had to think about it. I had to actually listen to one of your videos and you introduced yourself. So true confession. Hey, so LaRae, you rock. This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
have the next jam session set up June 5th. And LaRae, I don't know if you know
I
Marlene
do.
Chisholm.
I do. I
Yeah,
read her stuff all
fantastic
the time.
professional. One of my favorite
Yes.
people as well. The book From Conflict to Courage. She has so much wisdom to impart with us. We'll be back with that. So everybody have a great rest of your day. It was our honor to spend time with you, and I look
Oh,
forward to
no,
our
vice
next chance to
versa.
connect.
Thank you for asking me, Art. Thank you so
But
much.
you bet, you bet. Take care, LaRae, and everyone. We'll see you soon.